Thank you for watching this video on the global status of biotech crop adoption, also called GM crops. The ISAAA 2011 brief is made possible through support from two European philanthropic co-sponsors, Ibercaja from Spain and the Fondazione Bussolera Branca from Italy, both of which promote open dissemination and discussion of knowledge about science and technology. It is important to state at the outset that ISAAA is a pro-choice organization which provides scientists, policymakers and stakeholders worldwide with knowledge about modern crop biotechnology whilst respecting their individual rights to choose the technology that best suits their needs, whether it be conventional, organic or biotech. As the world's population continues to grow, the need for new technology to improve crop production, the major source of food, also continues to grow, and it was assigned high priority by the G20 world leaders when they met in France in November 2011. As of October 31st, 2011, the world population reached 7 billion. Such expansion requires new technology to increase crop productivity and ensure sustainability. Now, whereas biotech crops are not a panacea, they are an essential contributor for growth and development, capable of generating large gains in crop productivity while decreasing use of pesticides and conserving natural resources, particularly water. Advances in crop biotechnology, coupled with increasing worldwide adoption, will ensure a significant contribution to food security during a time when climate change will also present additional challenges. As you listen to the presentation today, please keep in mind the following three highlights. First, the rapid adoption worldwide of biotech crops. Second, the emerging leadership of developing countries. And third, the outlook for 2015 and beyond. 2011 marked the 16th anniversary of commercialization of biotech crops. Since first adoption in 1996, both numbers of farmers and hectareage planted have grown at unprecedented rates. Between 2010 and 2011, hectareage increased from 148 million hectares in 2010 to 160 million hectares in 2011. That is a double-digit increase of 12 million hectares, equivalent to 8%. Since commercialization in 1996, there has been a 94-fold increase in hectareage, up from 1.7 million hectares in 1996 to 160 million hectares in 2011. That makes biotech crops the fastest adopted crop technology in the history of modern agriculture. Nearly 17 million farmers globally have voluntarily elected to adopt biotech crops. From 1996 to 2011, farmers in 29 countries worldwide made more than 100 million decisions to plant and replant more than 1.25 billion hectares. Now that's an area of cropland 25% larger than the total landmass of the United States or China. Of the 29 countries planting biotech crops in 2011, 19 were developing countries and 10 were industrial countries. Notably, out of the top 10 biotech crop countries, 8 were developing countries and only 2 were industrial. Each of the top 10 countries grew more than 1 million hectares, providing a broad foundation of support for sustainable and diversified growth in the future. The lead developing countries in biotech crops are Brazil and Argentina in Latin America, China and India in Asia, and South Africa on the continent of Africa. Collectively, these 5 countries grew 44% of global biotech crop hectareage, equivalent to 70 million hectares, and together they represent 40% of the global population. Developing countries grew approximately 50% of global biotech crops in 2011 and are expected to exceed industrial country hectarage in 2012. Growth rate for biotech crops during 2011 was twice as fast and twice as large in developing countries at 11% or 8.2 million hectares versus 5% or 3.8 million hectares in industrial countries. In 2011, a record 16.7 million farmers, up 8% or 1.3 million from 2010, grew biotech crops. Notably, over 90% or 15 million were small, resource-poor farmers in developing countries. Now, farmers are masters of risk aversion, and in 2011, a record 7 million small farmers in China and another 7 million in India elected to plant 14.5 million hectares of Bt cotton. Brazil ranks second only to the USA in hectarage, and for the third consecutive year, Brazil had the largest increase in the world at 4.9 million hectares, approximately a 20% increase from 2010. This was achievable because Brazil has developed a model with the following three features. First, a fast-track approval system. Such regulatory advantages have allowed Brazil to approve 8 traits in 2010 and 6 additional traits in 2011. Brazil has also approved the first stacked soybean trait with both insect resistance and herbicide tolerance and is set for commercialization in 2012. Second, a capacity to develop its own homegrown biotech crops. Embrapa, Brazil's public sector agri-research institute, has a $1 billion annual budget and the technical capacity to develop, deregulate, and deploy innovative new technologies such as a new state-of-the-art virus-resistant biotech bean. Beans are particularly important for Latin America because beans are a staple commodity in the region. Third, Brazil has a diversified pipeline for biotech crops. Brazil has taken full advantage of the biotech pipeline and has 3 streams of technology for generating new products for the country. Stream 1 products are the ones that have been extensively grown globally for many years and developed by the transnationals. They include Roundup Ready soybean and biotech maize and cotton, which occupied over 30 million hectares in Brazil in 2011. Stream 2 products are from public-private sector partnerships. An herbicide-tolerant soybean was jointly developed by Embrapa and BASF and is already approved for commercialization. Stream 3 products are developed by Brazilian public sector institutions. The virus-resistant Phaseolus bean was developed entirely by Embrapa and is already approved for commercialization. Thus, simultaneous investment by Brazil in all 3 streams of technology optimizes impact and minimizes opportunity cost, and these lead to expedition of approval of new biotech products. This 3-stream approach is highly effective for Brazil and a key lesson for other countries around the world. In 2011, the United States continued to be the lead producer of biotech crops globally, with 69 million hectares, with an average adoption rate of approximately 90% across the 4 principal biotech crops. During 2011, there was a particularly strong growth in maize and cotton. The resumption of planting of Roundup Ready alfalfa is important and will help move the adoption needle. At approximately 8 million hectares, alfalfa is the 4th largest hectarage crop in the US after maize, soybeans, and wheat. Roundup Ready sugar beet is the fastest adopted biotech crop in the country and contributed to the US 69 million hectare stake in biotech crops in 2011. Roundup Ready sugar beet has a 95% adoption rate, equivalent to 475,000 hectares. Finally, and importantly, from a regulatory point of view, virus-resistant papaya from the US was approved for consumption as a fresh fruit in Japan effective 1 December 2011. Now I would like to discuss several advancements in 2011, including a global overview of biotech cotton. During 2011, global plantings of cotton reached an all-time high of 36 million hectares, of which around 25 million hectares, or two-thirds, were biotech cotton. Since 1996, an accumulated area over 150 million hectares of biotech cotton has been planted by 13 countries, 11 of which are developing countries. The largest group of potential beneficiary countries that have yet to adopt biotech cotton are about 15 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, planting at least 100,000 hectares each. They include countries like Mali in Francophone West Africa and Uganda in Anglophone East Africa. In 2011, substantial increases in hectarage of biotech cotton were reported in many countries worldwide, but particularly by the lead developing countries of India and China. In 2011, India celebrated a decade of successful cultivation of Bt cotton, which has transformed the cotton crop into the most productive and profitable crop in the country. In 2011, for the first time, plantings of Bt cotton in India surpassed the historical milestone of 10 million hectares, occupying 88% of the record 12.1 million hectare cotton crop. Historically, the increase from 50,000 hectares of Bt cotton in 2002, when Bt cotton was first commercialized, to 10.6 million hectares in 2011 represents an unprecedented 212-fold increase in 10 years. 7 million farmers, growing on average 1.5 hectares of cotton, have benefited the most from such high adoption rates. For India, Bt cotton has transformed cotton production by substantially increasing yield and decreasing insecticide applications by 50%. In 2011 alone, through welfare benefits, India has contributed to the alleviation of poverty of 7 million small, resource-poor farmers and their families. In China, 7 million small, resource-poor farmers, who on average farm only half a hectare, grew a record 3.9 million hectares of Bt cotton, representing an all-time high adoption rate of 71.5%. The Chinese government has reaffirmed the strategic importance of biotech crops, which are developed under strict biosafety standards. Biotech phytase maize and Bt rice, approved for biosafety in 2009, are currently undergoing routine field testing. Biotech maize has been assigned high priority by the government for commercialization in order to meet a rapidly growing demand for maize as an animal feed, driven in turn by a rapid increase in meat consumption. Higher productivity from domestic biotech maize in China will also serve to offset increasing imports of maize. In other Asian countries, progress continues for adoption and development of feed and food crops. Currently, the Philippines is the only country in Asia that grows biotech maize. In 2011, the Philippines experienced a healthy 20% gain in biotech maize hectares. The expected approval of golden rice in the Philippines in 2013 or 2014 will be of significance to many Asian countries, including China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Bangladesh, which are also evaluating the product. Biotech maize is expected to be approved in Vietnam in 2012 or 2013, followed by Indonesia, which is also considering biotech sugarcane. BT eggplant is in advanced field testing in the Philippines and also a candidate for commercialization in Bangladesh. These developments are strong indicators of the region's priority and progress in commercializing feed and food crops. South Africa, Burkina Faso, and Egypt already commercialized biotech crops and together planted a record 2.5 million hectares in 2011. An additional 3 countries, Kenya, Nigeria, and Uganda, have already conducted biotech field trials. In the next 50 years, the world will consume twice as much food as the world has consumed since the beginning of agriculture 10,000 years ago. A startling statement. However, regrettably, the vast majority of global society is completely unaware of the formidable challenge of feeding the world of tomorrow. Also, most do not realize the potential contribution of biotech crops, which have already generated $78 billion worth of additional crop production between 1996 and 2010. The encouraging news is that food production can be doubled with improved technology and policies if global society embraces the new and improved technologies such as biotech crops in conjunction with conventional technology. In the 15-year period, 1996 to 2010, biotech crops contributed to food security, sustainability, and climate change in the following ways. Increasing crop production valued at $78 billion worth, and providing a better environment by saving 443 million kilograms of the active ingredient of pesticides. In 2011 alone, reducing CO2 emissions by 19 billion kilograms, equivalent to taking approximately 9 million cars off the road for 1 year. Conserving biodiversity by saving 91 million hectares of forests and conservation lands, and alleviating poverty by helping 15 million small farmers and their families, which total about 50 million people globally. Notably, these farming families represent some of the poorest people in the world. It is important to stress again that biotech crops are not a panacea, but are essential. Adherence to good farming practices such as rotations and resistance management is a must for biotech crops, just as they are for conventional crops. 3 requirements must be met for continued success. First, political will. Lead developing countries are witnessing strong support from their leaders. For example, former President Lula of Brazil was awarded the World Food Prize in 2011 for his contribution to food security and alleviation of poverty. President Lula provided strong political support for biotech crops in Brazil. Second, a new wave of improved mega biotech crops. Several mega biotech crops are expected to be released between now and 2015. Let me share with you 3 examples. The first is a stacked soybean in Brazil in 2012. Second, a drought-tolerant maize is expected in 2013 in the US. And last but not least, golden rice in the Philippines in 2013-2014. The third requirement is time and cost-effective deregulation. Notably, 3 new biotech countries are expected in Southeast Asia before 2015. and 3 additional African countries already have a regulation in place for conducting field trials of biotech crops. Lack of appropriate regulation is the major constraint that denies poor countries and the EU timely access to biotech crops. In the Horn of Africa, there are currently up to 10 million at risk from famine caused by drought. Dr. Felix Mboy from Kenya has been very critical of the EU's restrictive GM regulations. He said that, and I quote, "The EU is robbing Africa of the chance to feed itself and could threaten food security." And he went on to say that this kind of hypocrisy and arrogance can only apply to people with the luxury of a full stomach. Simultaneously, leading EU biological scientists from Sweden submitted a petition endorsed by UK scientists calling for a change in EU regulation to make it science-based and facilitate timely regulation of biotech crops in the EU. BASF had planned a EU release of its late blight-resistant biotech potato in 2014, subject to EU approval. In mid-January 2012, BASF halted commercialization of all its EU biotech crop products, including Fortuna. However, BASF confirmed that its approval process already started for Fortuna and other products will continue. This situation offers the EU an important opportunity to deregulate and benefit from Fortuna, which is resistant to the most devastating disease of potato, late blight, which caused the Irish famine in 1845 when 1 million people perished. Importantly, Fortuna is consistent with EU policy on several counts. It is a product of innovation, meets EU environmental needs, and can make potato production more sustainable by reducing heavy fungicide applications and decreasing production costs and losses, and also contribute to food security. Potato late blight has plagued the world for more than 150 years without a solution. And today it costs global society up to $7.5 billion annually, of which $1.5 billion is in EU countries alone. Success with Fortuna will result in decreased use of pesticides and increased potato yield, which will also contribute to food security, because potato is the 4th most important food crop in the world. Farmers in the EU favor biotech crops because of the benefits they offer and feel discriminated against compared with their counterparts in other crop biotech countries which allow the planting of many biotech crops. The EU farmer interest in biotech crops was reconfirmed in 2011 when they planted a record BT maize hectarage. In 2011, 6 EU countries planted a record 114,490 hectares of BT maize, up more than a substantial 25% on 2010. The ISAAA 2005 prediction that we would double the number of countries, double the hectarage, and double the number of farmers between 2006 and 2015 is on track. 2011 is the midpoint, and we are already halfway toward the 2015 prediction with 29 countries, 16.7 million farmers, and 160 million hectares in 2011. I estimate that up to 10 additional countries will adopt biotech crops by 2015, bringing the number of biotech crop countries globally to approximately 40. I expect the new developing countries to include up to 3 or 4 from each of the regions of Asia, West Africa, Eastern and Southern Africa, with fewer from Latin and Central America, where adoption is already high, and possibly some growth in Eastern Europe. ISAAA's strategy for biotech crops is consistent with Bill Gates's proposal to the G20 meeting in France in November 2011. There are three pillars: knowledge sharing, innovation, and creative partnerships between the North and South and between the public and private sectors. This is similar to what Brazil has been practicing successfully. To conclude, ISAAA's proposed activities in biotech crops can be implemented within the framework of a 3D strategy, D for David. The first D is D for development. Develop innovative crop biotechnology applications, recognizing that sharing knowledge with quite different partners from the North and South and the public and the private sector stimulates innovation. The second D is D for deregulation. Deregulate innovative biotech crop applications under the aegis of a responsible, science-based, cost and time-effective deregulation system to achieve timely deregulation of biotech crops. The third D is D for deployment. Deploy innovative biotech crop products in a timely manner to minimize opportunity costs and to optimize contribution to food security while alleviating poverty. In summary, the ISAAA strategy is based on knowledge sharing, innovation, and partnerships, which focus on the 3 Ds of development, deregulation, and deployment. Let me share some closing thoughts with you. The potential of biotech crops for the future, in conjunction with conventional technology, is enormous. Technology, both old and new, are essential elements in any global strategy for achieving food security, a more sustainable environment, including climate change, and importantly, to alleviate hunger and poverty, which in turn will lead to a more just and peaceful society. Norman Borlaug, the Nobel Peace Laureate, with whom I had the privilege of working over a 30-year period, and who saved 1 billion people from hunger, used to insist that you cannot build peace on empty stomachs. He was right. The challenge for the future is to work together towards a mutual goal as a global team. North, South, East and West, public and private sectors, to utilize both conventional and biotechnology applications within the context of a policy framework conducive to increasing food production and the alleviation of poverty and hunger. United, we will stand. Divided, we will fall. Thank you.